Two of the most terrifying dolls to ever exist come down to Robert the doll and Annabelle. And first, we'll just start with Robert. And I'm going to be as respectful as possible when talking about this because apparently if you're not, you could die. That's why Robert's casing is filled with apology notes from people who have had severe bad luck after disrespecting him upon seeing him at the museum. So let's get into Robert's backstory. As you guys know, the movie Chucky, who was based on this homicidal doll, was inspired by the doll Robert. Well, there was this family, the Otto family, and back in the early 1900s, they had a 10-year-old son named Eugene, who was given a doll that was gifted by one of the family servants. Well, this doll is honestly just very creepy. He is 3 feet in length and dressed up in a sailor's costume, and while this is terrifying now, back in the early 1900s, he was just a normal doll. Well, upon receiving the gift of Robert, Eugene got extremely attached to him. He'd bathe him, eat with him, and even sleep with him. I'm debating on seeing if this doll that I have is haunted. I'm a little scared to ask it questions, but maybe we'll try. But first, let's finish Robert's story. So Eugene continued to get more and more attached to this doll. And while this was normal at the age of 10, by the age of 13, it was a little much. His family would walk by his room and hear him talking to Robert. And they would hear Robert respond, but at first they thought Eugene had just made up a voice for him. But one day, the mom looked in to hear Robert's voice, which was very deep, and did not see her son's mouth moving. So the father got terrified and was like, hey, you need to stop sleeping with this doll. And trying to convince them, he was like, he might get dirty. But he was just trying to create that separation. And when this happened, they walked back into his room in the middle of the night because they heard screaming and crying. And they walked in to see furniture thrown and his toys mutilated. As time went on, scratches occurred on the wall, things were broken. And Eugene would always blame Robert for these things. The parents were very worried about his attachment to Robert and also the fact that he was blaming Robert for all his mistakes. Things get worse. Well, Eugene's dad comes up with an amazing idea of what to do with this terrifying doll. He takes him away and places him in the attic where no one can see him. But Robert decides to throw parties up there. He would make noises, and when guests would come over, they would hear screaming at night. Neighbors would even claim that they would see Robert move from the attic window. So he was essentially just terrorizing this family. So why exactly was this happening? Apparently, the mom did not treat her servants very well and even walked in on one of them doing black magic. I mean, who knows if this was true, but apparently she saw this and fired her. And as a parting gift, she ended up giving Robert to their son. Potentially doing voodoo on him? I don't know. But these happenings apparently decreased this family's social status by a lot, which was everything back then. Well, Eugene grew up, moved out of the house, and got married. And the family just kept the house and continued to keep Robert up there. Once Eugene's father passed away, he ended up inheriting the house. So Eugene's family moved back into the house around the 1920s. And Eugene found Robert again. So after years of not being attached to Robert, Eugene starts this cycle again. He finds the doll, brings it down to his wife, and is like, hey, here's this doll. And let me tell you, she is terrified of it. She's creeped out. She's like, no. But Eugene essentially introduces Robert as the new member of the family. He brings the doll to work with him. He was a painter, so he would set him up and have him just watch his murals. He took him to dinner and would feed the doll again. And his wife sometimes would hear the giggle of a child and walk by the room to see Robert in there. And then one night Eugene asked if Robert could sleep in their bed, and his wife was like, absolutely not. So he just put him on a chair next to them, and she was getting horrible night terrors. And not only this, but his mood changed just like it did when he was a kid. Instead of tantrums, he would have mood swings and become completely abusive to his wife. But during this time, divorce was considered failure. So they just remained together. And he passed away in 1974. So Robert finds a new child to attach to. Well, during the 70s and 80s, there was this rise of being scared of cults and Satanism. And so when this 10-year-old girl moved in and got extremely obsessed with the doll, such as bathing and eating and sleeping with it, and then the parents would start to hear the deep voice respond to her, they were worried that it was something satanic. So they took Robert straight to the priest, but he ended up bringing them back, and they tried to do the attic thing again. Eventually, it was just given to the East Martello Museum in Key West, Florida, where he now resides in a little glass box. But there's so many offerings and apology letters to him because of people disrespecting him and him causing apparently bad luck. And so many workers have reported seeing him move. Either way, Robert, I am so sorry for talking about you. Come over to my YouTube if you guys want to see me find out if my doll is haunted, and also talk to you guys about the Annabelle story. I'm going to be asking her some questions and sharing the original story of Annabelle.